I know you speak a lot about, the changing perception and the role of the CISO, how that's changing. Not speaking broadly, but how do you think how do you feel the CISO role has evolved for you throughout your career? Has it kind of morphed and changed into things? And maybe have there been times where you've had to kind of, draw a standard line or put your foot down and say, no, that's not my area. We need to create another, role here or segregate things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I've been doing this a while, and when I got into security and in security leadership, it was still very much a technical role for I would say most people, and especially for myself and most of my friends at the time. And so you had to be astute at, whether it was firewalls or something to be in that role because there was an expectation you were doing. And for my career, I'll be honest, that really did not stop even at Arby's before the Wendy's acquisition. So you think that scale, the reason they hired me at Arby's was because I had experience working with PCI and Cisco VPN. And I think my first day, the CIO said, well, there's not going to be enough security work for you to do here. So we're going to also give you payment technologies, which meant Verifone terminals. And I kid you not, my first 6 months at Arby's, I personally deployed about 30 Verifone terminals into restaurants and made sure they were working. And so, yeah, exactly. But what was interesting was I took that as a challenge, right? When he said that, I kind of said the same thing you did. I started kind of laughing a little. I was like, okay. And so then I came back and started, really showing like, this is really what we're doing. And this is what's going on. But that still stayed, I would say, up until probably a few years into the Wendy's, when Wendy's became a standalone company again, before that really finally changed. And because the quantity and the velocity of work we were doing became very clear that we needed different teams. So a little bit, to your question there on having to say, hey, I can't do this, that was more of a volume and, we need to hire expertise. But, when I came out of Wendy's, I went much more into executive consulting and true completely strategy and CISO roles. And probably the best example of a time where I've had to say, hey, look, this is just not a great fit. And I think also what a lot of folks have seen and what I've seen is the role and the expectations expanded beyond, hey, you need to be an IT and a security expert to now you also need to understand privacy to some point because you're probably the best equipped person at the company, and especially a smaller organization, and smaller being outside of the Fortune 1000 and maybe even that size, you're probably going to have to help tackle that or the company's going to fail. And then also a lot of legal, like I can't believe how much legal interpretation I've done over the last few years for customer contracts, for contracts with our vendors, and really having to start the same thing because I worked at a larger company and kind of learned what we looked out for. And as the company grew and, it was really part of being a leader within the company, not just beyond title, we start talking about, hey, we're at a size where things like privacy, this is not my forte. I've taken the classes, I've been to IAPP conferences, but asking a CISO to pick up privacy, it took me 25 years to get to the level of expertise I have now. I've been doing privacy as a side job for probably 3 or 4 years, and I feel like I'm just now dangerous enough to know when things look bad and when to punt to an expert. And so we actually had that discussion at Immuta where we were finally at that size where, we're getting close to 300 employees. And because of the customers we work with, it wasn't enough that we had, my background, and plus we had someone in legal engineering who had a strong privacy background. We couldn't possibly cover the globe. Privacy is not just GDPR. And so we actually did a couple of things. We got an external DPO, which is, fantastic services that are available now where we can do ad hoc, kind of get that DPO service and get a read on things, but also have an official DPO for our customers. Bringing on external privacy legal counsel. It was the same type thing of ad hoc of being able to say, hey, we've gotten the privacy policy to here and we think it's good. Getting that last view has really made a big difference. And that does take some discussion internally because a lot of times the executives may have a false sense of what we're experts in and what we're capable of. And so I think that's also that education piece of me to say, hey, we've made it to here. And if we were going to stay a 300-person company, maybe that would be okay, but that's not our plan. We're getting to a point where if we don't do things right, this is going to be difficult. But I think the ecosystem has also luckily changed where we could reach out and get, those point in time partners and really have a discussion about, I know that I worked for a privacy company before, and I know that I've done all these things, but I have just enough to tell us we have a problem. And I think that transparency is how I started day one. They understood, and I also, I know my organization fairly well now. And so I knew it wasn't going to be a hard conversation, and I do think sometimes those can be hard conversations because you're having to tell someone that, hey, you hired me and you thought I was going to be able to do everything. And guess what? That's not really true,
Yeah, you've got to be able to manage expectations, haven't you, to a certain extent. And when it becomes, kind of risky for one person to be over leveraged or spread too thin, that you have to have the confidence to kind of step up and say, okay, we need to bring in external help or hire additional people and so on, just to preempt anything going disastrously wrong, certainly.